Welcome, I'm Eric with Vast Strength. In this video, I'm going to be discussing 5 items that you might be able to commonly find at your local hardware store, automotive store, or farming goods store, or in a similar department in your local big box discount store. These are items that are not intended for home gym use, so please exercise some common sense and caution, and obviously use at your own risk. Hopefully you'll find these things helpful, as I have. Let's get to it. The first item I'd like to discuss is actually more of an automotive item, which is a jack stand. All right, so these are things that would typically be used in an automotive setting and used to maybe hold up a vehicle that you're working on. So what do I use them for in the home gym? Well, I use them specifically when I'm trying to load a landmine, and also when I'm doing landmine work, especially a setup in which I do seal rows, that I can use it to get the bar elevated high enough that I can get a hold of it in that position. So it's something that I've found very helpful, and it's reasonably rugged. Now this one, I would tell you, comes from Harbor Freight. And the reason I mention that is something unique about the one that you can find at Harbor Freight is the top setting here. This is a rubber piece. So this is the 3-ton jack. It runs, I believe, around $40 to $50 typically. And you can see this is the way it looks without the rubber top, so metal. Now that I think wouldn't be as good, but with this rubber piece that you see here, we're able to essentially snap that on, and it goes on. Once it's on, it's actually on there quite well. Maybe I'll get it on here. So, and it serves as a really nice surface for the for a barbell. So that's my use for it. And maybe you'll find it useful for that as well. The second item I'd like to discuss is kind of a heavy item here. And this is essentially a water container, or essentially a multi-use container. This is a 5.5 gallon jug. Now you might be able to tell, I don't know if you can see it very well in the image here, but in the video, but right here you can see the line. So this one's filled with sand. I also have one that's actually filled with water. So the water one runs in at about 50 pounds. This one at its current level that you see here runs at about 75 pounds. So this one could go a little bit heavier, although my guess is I don't think you'd be able to get 100 pounds of sand in this. Now one reason I like this container in particular is you can see it has a very large opening, which makes it easier to load. And if you're also wanting to dump anything out, like you put too much sand in, it also makes it easier to take the extra sand out. You'll notice the handle here is got a little bit of a grip to it, which is kind of a plus or minus. So I do use this, but you can see with the shape of this that depending on where you're holding it, whether you're holding it this way or whether you're holding it the other way, will give a little bit different feel. Specifically, I use this for doing carries, such as farmer carries or suitcase carries. And if you want, you can use a fat grip. Now, with this one in particular, the blue fat grip is too big. It won't fit in here, but the black fat grip will. So that's another thing that you can do, and really, while you're doing your farmer carries, you can get a really good workout in regards to your grip as well. So this is something I really like. I've gotten this one particularly, I got at Menards, which it ran about $20 when I bought it. I actually have 2 of them. I've also seen it at essentially the exact same one at some local farm stores. So that's something you might want to keep an eye out for. There are other versions, but again, I really like the fact this one has this big cap and just makes it so that it's a lot easier to load and unload. So for 20 bucks, this is, and then the cost of sand, of course, this is a great purchase, and I use it a lot, although mainly outdoors. But keep this in your garage, and if you've got it filled with sand, you don't really have to worry about the issue of it freezing over, and just occasionally do a carry with it. I've really grown to love the loaded carries, and maybe you will too. So keep this one in mind, $20. For the third thing I'm going to discuss, it's going to harken back to the first one, which was a jack stand. In this case, it's a jack pad. So what's a jack pad? Well, specifically it's made for a trailer or a camper or an RV that's going to have a jack in the front of it that's going to essentially hold up the front of the trailer. And this would be what you would put on the ground, and it is a non-compressible surface. It's about 10,000 pound rated and about 1 inch in thickness. And again, this is really non-compressible stuff, so it's pretty heavy duty. This is something I bought in the RV section at Walmart for about $7. What do I use it for? What can you use it for around the home gym? Well, essentially just gives you a little bit of extra space and cushion, or at least protects the surfaces beneath it. So if you're trying to protect maybe a hardwood floor or a concrete floor with a heavy dumbbell, then this is something that could sit underneath there and work quite well. Or if you're wanting to, for instance, raise the feet up on a bench that you have, it serves well for that purpose. Or in this case, my calf block that you see kind of right above me here on my right shoulder, that you can put this down and get an added inch in regards to your height. So it's one of those things that I bought it when I just happened to see it at Walmart for $7 and didn't really have a purpose in mind. But then once I got it home, I found I had lots of purposes for it. So again, a jack pad, 1 inch thick, 10,000 pound rated, $7. It was worth it for me. The fourth thing I'm going to discuss in this video is another thing that's somewhat more automotive related, and that is a rope shackle. All right. So this is something you might commonly see used, for instance, people doing off-roading and using a winch, and this can give them a strong attachment point. Now these are typically rated to very high weights, typically in the tons. And I use them commonly in the gym to serve as attachment points in my power rack. Now, most of the time, I use it as something that's more of a temporary thing. I tend to like to kind of fiddle around and tinker around with lots of different setups and different exercises. So sometimes I like to use something like this in order to serve as a temporary fixation point with the plan of maybe doing something different later. For example, with my power rack arm here, you can see I've got an actual metal shackle here that serves the purpose for attaching my Aries 2.0 to my lever arms so that I can get weight distribution through here. But I first tested out kind of where I wanted it and what I wanted to do with using a rope shackle. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, I do have some things that I use a rope shackle for a more permanent basis on, and that's just because, well, frankly, I couldn't find any better way to do it that I was satisfied with. And sometimes that required a lot of testing, meaning that a couple uses, one here that I'm going to show you, which is using it for a connection for a pulley, for being able to raise and lower the lever arms that I have on my power rack. I tried lots of different attachments for that pulley, and in the end, this is the one that worked best for me. So didn't intend on the rope shackle being my final option in that case, but it just seemed to be what worked best for me. This is another example of me using a rope shackle in a somewhat permanent basis. This is a connection point in my lever belt squat setup so that I can start, instead of being in the hole, start in an upright position and have it be supported. I did play around with other options, but this just seemed to be the simplest and most effective for what I was wanting to accomplish. Probably more so than any other item I've discussed, use at your own risk. You know, this is something that I think if you're not smart and being safe about, there would be some potential for injury. And I do check the ropes quite frequently to make sure that I'm not seeing any failure, which I haven't yet, but like anything, it probably will over time. So wear and tear will probably cause degradation. So again, keep that in mind. For the fifth and final item I'm gonna discuss, I'm gonna take a second and brag a little bit. Now, I generally don't like to brag, but in this case, I think it's worth mentioning that you are probably presently listening to one of the foremost experts in the area of toilet washers in the home gym. Now, maybe there's people who know more about this than I do. And for those people, I just say, I'm sorry. But for me, this has been a very helpful item in my home gym, and it might be honestly my favorite one, just because it's kind of a goofy idea, but it seemed to work really well for the purposes in which I use it. Now, what this is essentially is typically gonna be listed as a toilet to tank washer. It's a piece of rubber, all right? Generally gonna be fairly thick, fairly stout. Now there's different types and different sizes. So they can have an inner diameter of 2 to 3 inches. The one you're gonna be wanting to get for probably the purposes you'll use in the home gym is gonna have a 2-inch diameter so that you can use it for the purposes that I do. Now, you'll see they're sometimes made in different ways. So sometimes they're not consistent with their thickness, as you see here, or other times they do have a consistent thickness all the way essentially throughout, although they are tending to be more of a kind of volcano type shape. They come in varying heights, so some are gonna be thicker than others. Okay, we have kind of the baby bear, mama bear, papa bear situation with these, all right? Now, how do I use them in the home gym environment? Well, specifically on plate horns. So what they can do is serve as a cushion or padding to prevent you from hitting your weights on any bolts that may be sitting on your power rack. So they essentially are just serving as a spacer. Again, with all my vast wisdom when it comes to these, the one I found that works the best actually is one that I picked up at Lowe's. And here specifically is the model, which is number 0330402. I don't know if this is still available. And actually the ones at the Lowe's I had looked like they'd been there for maybe a decade, but these are the ones that work the best. They're thicker, or thickness is consistent, and then the height is taller than most. So they fit really nicely on the plate horn. So as you can see, they kind of really just a perfect fit. And once we do that and we add a weight, you can see that this keeps us from running into our head of our bolt here. So again, this is my favorite use probably for a hardware type item to use in my home gym. I have to say, I guess I'm kind of proud that I might be the expert of toilet washers for the home gym environment. Well, those are 5 items that I find beneficial in my home gym, and maybe you'll find them beneficial as well. If you enjoyed this video or found it at all helpful, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more content similar to this, please let me know, although I don't guarantee that I'll be as much of an expert in everything as much as I am toilet washers in the home gym. As always, get strong, be smart, stay safe. Thanks for watching.